Rink Wide's Jeff Paterson joins us after the Vancouver Canucks find out their first round playoff opponent. It's the Nashville Predators. Jeff, first blush thoughts.
It's a long way to go for both teams, obviously, and travel is a factor. If the Canucks have designs on going deep into the playoffs, there's a potential that they could go through Nashville. At some point, could have to find their way to Dallas, the Florida Panthers. If it was a Stanley Cup playoff or a Stanley Cup final, they don't have to worry about those other teams. They have to worry about the Predators. And I just think of a team that's been red hot down the stretch here. Had that 18-game run where they picked up points, 16 of the victories. And so got to be careful what you wish for. I know that there were a lot of fans that thought this was the better matchup for the Vancouver Canucks, and I get that. Just knowing that the Vegas Golden Knights are the defending champs, and everybody feels like they're going to ramp things up in the 1-3-1 of the Los Angeles Kings. So it's the Predators, and man, they've got some top-end talent. And if the Canucks can hold that in check, then you'd like to think that on balance, the Canucks are a deeper hockey club. But one thing to say it, it's another thing to get out there and perform.
You say they're red hot down the stretch, and they've been red hot in the second half. Form hasn't been as great recently for Nashville. In fact, their last win against the playoff team was against Vegas on March 26th. How much do you think form matters? And that goes for the Vancouver Canucks too, who finished against Winnipeg this evening.
Yeah, well, when I say red hot down the stretch, look, we all know the season that Quinn Hughes has had as the top defenseman in the National Hockey League. Roman Josi has 11 more points than Quinn Hughes since Christmas. So just kind of chew on that for a sec to give you a sense of where Roman Josi's been playing. Philip Forsberg, third most goals in the National Hockey League since the All-Star break, behind Austin Matthews, who's pretty good at putting pucks in the net, and Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. So Philip Forsberg, a 48-goal season. Roman Josi, third in NHL scoring among defensemen. And that line that he plays on, Ryan O'Reilly's been exactly what they hoped he would be when they went out and signed him. And I wondered if he still had some mileage left in him, but clearly he does. And that line with Gus Nyquist. So, that line has absolutely driven the Nashville Predators. And when I say below those guys, if you can keep them in check, their second line center is Colton Sissons, who's had a very nice National Hockey League career. And we like our North Vancouver guys, Blake. Shout out to Colton Sissons. But the Canucks 1-2 punch down the middle is JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. You'd like to think advantage Vancouver Canucks there, but that's where I say it's one thing to say that. It's another to get out there and actually make it happen. Predators are the only Western Conference team with more hits on the season than the Vancouver Canucks, so we might be in for a physical battle. Jeremy Lauzon led all players in the NHL in hits this season, and in fact, the Preds had 3 guys in the top 15. And I know that hits can be a bit of a nebulous concept in terms of the buildings that they're in and all those types of things. Bottom line is the Nashville Predators see themselves as a big, strong, physical team, and we'll see how the Vancouver Canucks handle that challenge. And I guess, too, when I look at this matchup, guys, UC Saros, he can be a game breaker. He has not had his best season. And for all the angst in this marketplace about the workload for Thatcher Demko, we're going to find out if workload for a starting goaltender is an issue here. Nobody made more starts, appeared in more games, faced more shots, or made more saves this season than UC Saros of the Nashville Predators, and yet his save percentage at .906 is the worst of his time in the National Hockey League. So, again, he can be a difference maker. I don't think he's been as good as he has been in years gone by. The numbers would back that up, and maybe some of that is the team in front of him was playing so well and so locked in over the final, whatever it was, 35 or 40 games. So, this is going to be a challenge, without a doubt. There are some issues that the Vancouver Canucks have to face, but they knew that whoever they drew in the first round this year in the West, they were going to get a quality opponent.
I'm going to be interested to see what the X's and O's are of this series and I think Rick Tocchet is going to try to keep his team playing the structure that he has in the second half of the season. But ultimately, if the Nashville Predators are okay trading chances, and by all accounts they are, I mean, they create a ton of their own, but ergo they are susceptible to give them up as well. I mean, we've seen the Canucks, I think, can play that game for the most part. I mean, they did that versus Calgary the other night, and they did just fine because they've got the better goaltender right now, the more informed goaltender in Thatcher Demko. What do you think they get sucked into that? Because we know Rick Tocchet is going to be preaching structure, defense, all that sort of stuff, but might they get sucked into trading chances with the Preds?
I'd be surprised if it was wide open and track meet style hockey. Coaches will always tell you that they want to play it close to the vest and lock it down. Again, I just think with this Canucks team, we have seen if they can establish their game, get a lead, then they're so able to dictate the way that they want to play. And I think that's going to be a key for the Canucks. But look, the Predators are going to want the first goal just as much. So first goal's been key to the Vancouver Canucks, but are they going to open the scoring in every game in the series? Probably not. And so at that point, maybe it does force them to change a little bit. But I mean, you've got two guys in Josi and Hughes who absolutely can tilt the ice in their favor when they're on the ice together. What does that look like? There's only one puck out there, and they both want it on their stick. So that's kind of the game within the game. Who can really take over and control hockey games more? And they're both so capable of that. But when I look at the Vancouver Canucks, and again, on paper, they appear to be just a slightly deeper hockey club. But we know that a lot of that secondary scoring had success in the early half of the season, not so much in the second half. But when you look at the Predators, do you fear, Kiefer Sherwood and Cole Smith and, Tommy Novak and guys like that? Probably not, but they're legitimate National Hockey Leaguers, and they've all been a part of what the Predators have been able to accomplish this season. And those guys don't have a lot of NHL experience either. So, I don't want to just to disregard those types of players. But again, I think if the Canucks can get the matchups they're looking for, take advantage of home ice, do what they can to limit the opportunities. Because Forsberg was 5th in the NHL in shots this year. Like, he's going to get his looks. That's just what he does. Mm-hmm. He scored 48 times. But if you can limit those guys, then you're forcing the Nashville Predators secondary scorers to rise up and maybe have to level up. And ultimately, we'll see if they're able to do that.
Jeff, Canucks were 3-0 against them this year. Of course, all of those games happened early in the season. The last one came in December. Does head-to-head matter here?
I don't think so. I mean, look, the Canucks certainly have that in their back pocket, and the Predators haven't shown that they can beat the Canucks. But you're right. 2 of the first 9 games, I believe, were against the Nashville Predators. Elias Pettersson had a hat trick on Halloween here in Vancouver, the only game played at Rogers Arena. So you're going back to late October for the one and only visit by the Preds. The Canucks finished up that 5-game road trip right out of the gate. One of their impressive wins, and I think that was one of those sort of hallmark nights that maybe gave us a sense that things were going to be different at the end of a trip that started in Edmonton, took them as far south as Tampa and Florida. They had enough left in their tank to walk into Nashville, dictate the way that game was played, and they looked really good doing it that night. So, that was a good win for them. And then the win just before Christmas. So, yeah, I mean, look, if you're looking for slight edges, psychological warfare, whatever, if you're the Canucks, you're probably thinking, hey, yeah, this is great. Like, we went 3-0. If you're the Predators, you can say it doesn't matter, but ultimately they're going to have to get out there and show it. Now, 2 wins at Bridgestone, that might have some value for the Vancouver Canucks as they head in there for games 3 and 4, whenever they are. The other thing to keep in mind, though, guys, the Predators were a really good road team this year. I know they lost here in Vancouver in their one visit, but 24 wins on the season as the Roadsters. So they're not afraid to play away from home, and they're going to have to start. And they know the math is what it is. They have to win at least once at Rogers Arena if they're going to defeat the Vancouver Canucks.
Does the Sunday start say anything to you about rest for either team? It's kind of a nice amount of rest for the Nashville Predators, especially considering they have to travel. And I would guess they travel on Friday, as soon as they can. For the Canucks, I mean, it could be better. Monday would probably have been the perfect one. But what do you think of a Sunday start?
Yeah, I think it's all right. I was worried when there was the reports that they had shifted the entire start date of the playoffs to the Saturday. And I thought, what's the reward there if you're going to win the conference or even win your division, have to fly back from Winnipeg and turn around and get right back at it? So I kind of thought, a little unjust if that was the case. But I think by Sunday, they'll take Friday off after flying home from Winnipeg, get in a good solid practice. Coaches can start their preparation if they haven't already, now that they know they're locked in against the Predators. And for the Preds, probably a little bit of, I don't know if anxious is the word, but just itching to get going. I mean, they finished the other night against Pittsburgh. And so from a coaching perspective, I don't think rest is great to a point, but I also think these guys are hockey players, creatures of habit, and they're going to want to get amped up and get going. So, no, yeah, I'm not sure that there's an edge or an advantage either way. I'm curious to see ultimately, the Canucks leaving Brock Besser at home for the trip to Winnipeg. I kind of was hoping that Quinn Hughes was going to be the guy that got left behind. Whatever the case, how much are guys going to play? We saw the Winnipeg Jets essentially moving the Manitoba Moose in for the night. And you can do that. I mean, that's the luxury, obviously, of having your farm team right there in the same city for a night like this one. So, I don't expect that we're going to see big minutes from anybody wearing Canuck colors, and that's the prudent play here. And I kind of laughed as Rick talked about getting Thatcher Demko a second straight start after coming off injury. And he was asked, though, if the game goes sideways and nobody's playing defense, and he said, if that's the case, he ain't going to be in there for long. So I think they're mindful of that there's no real benefit to Thatcher Demko, who's trying to find his rhythm and his routine again and look great the other night against Calgary. If this just becomes glorified shinny with very little defense, like an NBA All-Star game, that's not going to help Thatcher Demko in terms of his timing and his patterns and all of that kind of stuff. So Demko will get some looks. How many? I guess we'll see how the game plays out.
Jeff, our old friend Anthony Beauvillier features with the Nashville Predators. If you didn't follow his progress
with that playoff record of his, yes.
I was just going to say, he's 29 points in 49 postseason games, and Patrick Galvin mentioned that a couple of times upon his acquisition from the Islanders about how good he played against their Pittsburgh teams in the playoffs. I imagine we're going to have a pretty motivated Predators winger here. What do you make of the ex-Canuck Beauvillier and his potential to make a mark on this series?
Yeah, I guess I would have liked to have seen him look a little more motivated. Well, he was still a member of the Vancouver Canucks. Look, nice guy. I enjoyed dealing with him, but he just brought nothing earlier this season. And what did he score the 10th goal in the 10-0 win in 10-1 win in San Jose? I think that was like the height of his offensive contributions to the Vancouver Canucks. He was all right after the trade. This is a contract year for him, and so we'll see what his future holds, obviously. But 2 teams removed now from the Vancouver Canucks after going to Chicago. So motivated, perhaps. We'll see what that looks like. This isn't a guy that plays with a ton of edge. I don't think the Canucks have to game plan for Anthony Beauvillier. I'd be a little more concerned about older friend Luke Schenn, who, when I talked about them being a big, strong, physical team, he's one of 4 Predators with over 200 hits on the season. So Beauvillier's kind of slotted into a third line on that team. And, I put some stock in playoff experience, especially because the Canucks have so little of it. And, maybe there are some nerves in the early going, and something like that, shouldn't phase a player like Beauvillier that's been around the block a handful of times now. But again, I'll be surprised when we break down this first round when it's over, if we're talking an awful lot about Anthony Beauvillier and the impact that he has on this series.
All right. Poll question time.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you like, and in how many games?
Yeah, I've said all along that given the distance this Vancouver Canucks team has traveled, and I undersold them. Nothing alone, I know that in the market, but I wasn't even sure that they were going to be a playoff team, and here they are winning the division. So absolute credit to them and the job that the players have done, the coaching staff. And I think as you travel that 81 or 82 game journey when they finish up in Winnipeg, it's fair that expectations change and the star power and the way guys have leveled up. And if they don't get through a first round, all of the regular season success really means very little. So there's some pressure on the Canucks to win a round. And saying that, I expect them to win a round here. I think they're the better team. I think that they've got an edge in goal. I want to believe that they've got more star power that will show up and perform relative to the Nashville Predators. And so I think difference makers, are the guys that you're going to look to swing a series in your favor. And then we talked a little bit about depth as well. So I like the Vancouver Canucks in a lot of ways here, but I just think in this day and age, and especially this year in the Western Conference, these are all really good teams. Obviously, the Predators got to 99 points, and that's a 7th seed. And I would expect that the Canucks are probably going to have to win one in Bridgestone. I would be surprised if the Preds didn't find a way to win on the road here. I think back to 2011 though, and part of the Canucks story there was they ran out of gas, obviously, against Boston, and they had to make that trip back to Chicago when they should have taken care of the Blackhawks in 5, and they should have taken care of the Predators in 5, and had to go back to Nashville for a 6th game and got it done there. So, I look at 6. I know it's tough to finish series on the road, but as I sit here right now, I'm going to say Canucks in 6.
No Ryan Kessler for the Canucks this time around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, if Kessler was playing in this series, Canucks in 3. That's how good he was in Nashville.
To be
Yeah,
fair,
but saying that, they still had to go 6 against the Predators.
No, it's true.
back-to-back.
They blew that game. Game 5. You're right.
To be fair, the Predators didn't think they'd be where they are this year, too. Like, as surprising as the
Well,
Canucks are this season,
Blake,
I don't think anybody had the Preds pegged in for 99 points.
Blake, even at the deadline,
Yeah.
there were some in moves and some out moves.
Yeah.
They brought in Zucker. They brought in Beauvillier. They moved out Trennan. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the stories out of Nashville leading up to the deadline was that,
maybe they should sell.
Barry Trotz and the new management group there basically had a longer term vision than the immediacy of the deadline and their playoff chances this year.
Guys,
So,
I think there was some legitimacy to UC Saros, at least teams phoning.
yes, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
And here's the thing. Brunette is probably going to be runner up to Tocchet for the Jack Adams.
That's right.
So we've got probably the two best coaching jobs in the National Hockey League that were done here. And of course, a lot of the Predators' work came in the second half after Trotz dropped the hammer and said, not professional enough. You guys don't get to go to the Sphere and Las Vegas, which of course the Predators have in common with the Paterson family from their failed Vegas.
No, they got there. They got there eventually.
The Patersons got there. Shannon Paterson was not going to be denied. So, yeah, in that regard, you are talking about two teams that are in some cases happy to be here, in some cases surprised.
The big difference, goals against.
The
goal differential that much better for the Canucks. We'll see if that plays a role here. Yeah.
Well, and also, guys, Preds penalty killing and the Canucks penalty killing isn't a whole lot better, but we know the struggles of the Canucks power play. Had they faced Los Angeles, the Kings have one of the top 2 penalty kills in the NHL. Predators are 22nd, and that's been a bit of an issue for them all season long. And we'll see if the Canucks can get the power play going. Maybe that's an opportunity to exploit a weakness in that Predators lineup.
Oh, must drive Barry crazy that they're bad on the penalty kill. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Thank you for this. We'll be listening and watching Rink Wide tonight, live right after, moments after the final horn in Winnipeg. And, of course, you'll be covering this Nashville series throughout. Thank you for this.
All right, guys, bring it on. Playoff time. Can't wait.
Game on.
No Besser, Miller, Hronek, or Cole for the Canucks tonight.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.